Okay, and I'm back for part 2 of chapter 5 of your book, Berk textbook. We left off, we were talking about mental representation. Now I want to talk just a little bit about deferred imitation. So Piaget had 4 age groups where he felt that infants were learning how to imitate the world around them. So he decided at 6 weeks that infants would begin to imitate facial expressions. This is if mom or dad are leaning over baby and smiling at them or making funny faces, baby would imitate in some way that facial expression. At 6 to 9 months, babies will copy novel actions with objects. So then at 12 to 14 months, they're going to imitate rashly. About 12 to 14 months is when you will see babies begin playing peekaboo, patty cake, doing the same behaviors as the person doing it with them. About 6 to 9 months, this is when baby will wave. If somebody waves at them, such as say bye-bye, and waving bye-bye, they'll wave as well. 14 to 18 months, they begin imitating actions that are intended but not completed. So if the parent will initiate peekaboo or they'll initiate patty cake, baby will continue through imitating that and actually completing it without having to see the whole thing from the person doing it first. So to evaluate Piaget's sensory motor stage, many people have used him as the theorist, and they've done research based on his theories, and they have decided that there are some capacities that do develop when Piaget suggested they do, such as searching for objects, discerning the difference between A and B, and make-believe play. Infants, toddlers do hit these stages when Piaget suggested. Some capacities they have identified start a little earlier than what Piaget suggested, such as object permanence, deferred imitation, and problem solving. These things have become known as what's called a core knowledge that infants are born with. We're going to talk just a little bit about these core knowledge areas that are present in infants that kind of span across several theorists. So they're things that are in common within several different theorists. So babies are born with a set of core domains of thought, such as they can pick up on information quickly. They are growing, so they're taking information and they're integrating it into practice rapidly, much more rapidly than you or I can do at our ages that we are at right now. So there's 4 domains of core knowledge. This is physical, linguistic, psychological, and numerical. And the areas that are growing so rapidly in the new infant are the physical and the psychological. And then as the infant starts to develop and grow, psychological will kick in, and then numerical. So an infant's numerical knowledge. Research suggests that infants can discriminate quantities up to 3. They can perform a simple addition and subtraction. Now, they can't explain it. They certainly can't have the vocabulary to explain what they're doing, but they have been able to come up with some very simple tests to determine that they can discriminate quantities up to 3 and know the difference between 2 or 1 or putting all 3 together. Now, there is some controversy. Like I said, they can't describe it, so you don't really know what they're doing or what they're thinking, but the tests suggest that they're able to do this. So my slide is stuck here. There we go. All right, so information processing. This is that psychological process. Sights and sounds, they are represented directly. They are stored briefly, and this is called a short-term memory store. Attended to information is retained briefly and worked on. Working memory is how many items can be held briefly while engaging in some effort to manipulate them. A long-term memory is permanent knowledge base. So, short-term memory. Have you ever been given, somebody says, remember this phone number. I'm going to ask you for it in a few minutes. So what do you do to remember that phone number? When they first give it to you, it's entering into a short-term memory. When you recite it over and over and over again, almost like in a chanting, so that you're able to give it back to them, that is your working memory. And then long-term memory is when you just memorize it and you don't have to chant it, repeat it, that kind of stuff. And that's a very good example of short, working, and long-term, because when you've got it in your working memory and you're chanting those numbers over and over again so you don't forget the phone number, heaven help the person who says a bunch of random numbers, because it messes up your working memory. And that's because you have a limited area to hold that information that you are manipulating. And with infants, toddlers, young children, this is an even smaller process than what an older child, adolescent, young adult, or an adult has. So that's why if you're giving directions to them, you do very simple, very small numbered steps to help that child accomplish a task. So this is just a visual of that information processing. To show you going in and going out. And central executive down there on the bottom is the conscious part of the mind. It kind of coordinates that incoming information. It controls your attention. It selects, applies, and monitors the effectiveness of the strategies you're using. It kind of, if somebody says, remember this number, the central executive is what tells you what to do to help remember it. It kind of just runs in the background the whole time. So managing the cognitive systems activities. Again, central executive runs continuously in the background. And then there's something called automatic processes, and this requires no space in working memory. It can be done while focusing on other information. Fast forwarding to somebody who enjoys knitting as an older adult. And people are able to knit, watch TV, or listen to a lecture, and the knitting does not require any working memory or minimal thought process, so they're able to focus on other activities. That's an automatic process. For example, multiplication tables when you're in school. You do them over and over and over again until they're committed to memory and they're committed to automatic processes. And with infants, babies, they also will, if you watch, they will progress through this area as well, where, at first reaching and grabbing hold of things is an awful process, and they'll do it over and over and over again until it just becomes a natural process for them. Okay, so improvements in the cognitive system. It's an increase in basic capacity of memory stores, especially working memory. So as the child develops and with age, their cognitive system will improve. They will have an increased speed in which information can be worked on, and they'll have an improvement in that central executive function as well. So the three areas that really improve are in infancy and toddlerhood are attention, memory, and categorization. So attention is that ability to shift focus. They're not as easily distracted by new items. They can pay attention to something longer. Memory is they will start having longer retention intervals, and they'll be able to recall things by the second half of their first year. So by about age 7 months, they'll be able to recall things from memory. And categorization is a gradual shift from perceptual to conceptual categorization in toddlerhood. And I'll talk just a little bit more about that. So development of categorization is perceptual. First categories are based on physical properties. By 6 months, babies will categorize on basis of 2 correlated features. And then as they shift to conceptual, so they'll shift to categories based on common function or behavior during toddlerhood. So let's go back to perceptual. Okay, we have baby who cries, mommy picks him up. Okay, so there's 2 correlated features. If I cry, I get held. If I cry, I get held. As they shift to categories based on common function or behavior during toddlerhood, they'll increase their categorization. If I say these words, I will get these things will happen. If I say milk, I'll get a bottle of milk. If I say hungry, I'll get food. So they're shifting for just a perceptual, generalized understanding and categorization to a much more detailed and organized categorization. So I'm going to pause there before I discuss Vygotsky's sociocultural theory. And I will come back with another recording. Thank you.